Hello and welcome to a second day here at LangTalent with Multilingual Media. Thank you so much for joining us today. We already have a good number of people listening to this over YouTube. So thank you everyone for tuning in for the second day. For those that have not seen the first day of our event, LangTalent, you will be able to find it on YouTube, and we will be posting some of them and on Spotify as well. If you want more information on this event, remember to go to multilingual.com/lang-talent. That's it. We will put it, or I'll put it in the chat as well for everyone to see if this allows me. Yeah, it does. So I just put it in the chat on YouTube. You should be able to also find in the description all of our social media. So follow us on Instagram and also follow the content that we have on our website. All of you, if you are here, is because you are subscribed to Multilingual Magazine, or to our newsletter, or you are part of our ecosystem. You will receive a free subscription of the magazine. So, of course, we are here to thank mainly our speakers. Yesterday, we had an amazing lineup, and this was a keynote and a panel. We first had the keynote, Building a Career in the Global Language Industry, with Natalie Greff Santa Maria, someone in the industry who has worked for the Paris Olympics 2024. And we also had a panel on essential skills for professionals with a multidisciplinary group of people. Melanie Francis from Global Search, a recruiter. We had Ludmila Golovine, CEO of Masterword, an entrepreneur, an amazing professional. And Max Troyer, also a great professional, but also a professor at the Middlebury Institute of International Studies. And that was yesterday. For those, like I said, that have not heard about this, you can go on our website. You should be able to see the content. You'll see it on Spotify, YouTube. We'll probably post some things on LinkedIn as well. So follow us on all of those places. For today, we have also an amazing lineup. The first conversation we're going to have, which it's a keynote where we'll be talking about AI power language tools for translators and interpreters. Now, I should say Laszlo, as an amazing professional, is someone who will be very particular about how he presents this information. So I really, really hope that you all make the most out of it and ask as many questions as possible. I, of course, want to take a minute before I talk about the panel to say hello to everyone who's saying hi from different places around the world: Ukraine, Portugal, Germany, Barcelona, Spain. Yes, many Ukrainians in Malaysia. So hello everyone. I'm myself located in Colombia, in South America. So hello from Colombia in South America, and I'm sure we'll see other people from other parts of the world, including Laszlo. The panel, after we have a conversation with Laszlo, which is about to start within the next 6 minutes, 5 minutes, is the panel on fostering well-being in remote work. And I think this is very important, is by far one of the conversations that goes to the heart of why we're doing LangTalent. And I should say that discovering remote work has been very empowering for some of us, very challenging in other ways, because we need to find other ways to connecting with our teams and connecting with the people that we do work with. And our industry has events for that. So that's interesting. Yet, you know, there are so many things that we need to do along the way to make sure that we live fulfilled lives. So as remote work becomes the norm, maintaining well-being is crucial for language professionals. This is the description now that I'm reading. In this panel, we'll address the unique challenges and opportunities of remote language work and offer strategies for fostering mental health, work-life balance, and professional growth. We're going to have Sophie Solomon, She works with Accenture and is also doing some amazing activities within Accenture. Nicole Spite James, who's working with Page. It's amazing what she's doing. I talked about them before. Liam Martin, a great professional, also with running remote, the largest conference for remote workers around the world, but also an entrepreneur and an influencer. So it's someone who you should know about. And Eva Klaudinjova, from the Middlebury Institute of International Studies. It's going to be an amazing end to the day. Mila, if you think there's anything else I should mention, let me know, because otherwise I just want to remind everyone that we publish content on our website. That is our publication. The latest issue that has been shipped around the world is the November issue. We are about to finish the December issue. It's going to be amazing what we have in there. But this physical magazine, you can read it online as well. If you prefer it online, you can do it online. But there is something very particular about having stories right in front of you. I was so surprised. This could have easily made the cover. It's amazing, right? It's a beautiful imagery. I just like it. All right. And we have more people saying hello from different parts of the world. Bogota, Colombia, Nestor. Good. I am in Cincelejo, Sucre. And Mila, our producer, who is behind the scenes, she is in Monteria, Córdoba, in Colombia as well. We have people from Taiwan, Nigeria, Argentina, Granada, Spain, and of course Dnipro in Ukraine, and Kharkiv, Dnipro and Kharkiv. I'm probably not pronouncing it correctly, but I'm sure you forgive me. Mila, thank you so much for waiting. Thank you so much for making this happen. Please share this stream with people in your network. And we are going to get started today with our first session, which is AI-powered language tools. I didn't want to say 10 because, there are so many. I don't know if we'll do 10. Laszlo will tell us, but we have said 10. Let's say AI-powered language tools for translators and interpreters for 2025. AI technology is set to transform the landscape of translation and interpretation. Discover 10 essential AI tools that will reshape how language professionals work in 2025. We'll showcase innovative solutions designed to enhance productivity and accuracy and collaboration, helping you stay ahead. This is with Mr. Laszlo Varga. So please help me welcome Laszlo Varga, who is a senior consultant at Nimdzi Insights with over a decade of experience in the localization industry, specializing in supply chain, process optimization, and strategic innovation. Known for his passion for understanding what drives success in individuals, teams, and businesses. He combines expertise in service delivery, solution development, and organizational change to help clients make impactful decisions. A keen advocate of continuous improvement and agile methodologies, Laszlo brings a systemic, end-to-end approach to driving value and fostering growth. So please help me welcome Mr. Laszlo Varga. Laszlo, welcome.
Eddie, thank you so much. And hello to everybody around the world.
Clapping right now. You just can't see it, but they are all clapping right now. Please, those
Fantastic.
that are, you might be able to see it in the chat. Please clap. Put emojis of claps, and then we'll all imagine the claps. So Laszlo, thank you so much for doing this.
Thanks, Eddie, for having me. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening to some of you online. And hello to future me and future everybody who will be rewatching this. And please don't laugh too hard when in 2-3 years' time, this presentation looks a little outdated. Things are happening fast.
We will do it again then. And then we'll
Absolutely.
say how amazing it is. I think it's one of the most exciting presentations for me because it's just making it more practical. We talk about a lot about how we should embrace. Oh, let's embrace. And it's very conceptual. It's okay. I'm ready to embrace. Then, what are some of the things that I
Embrace
can?
what?
Yeah, embrace what? So Laszlo, thank you so much for doing this. And Mila, I will let Laszlo do it. We will be around Laszlo looking at the questions that people have. I encourage everyone to write down the questions on the comments. We have right now 75 people watching live. So we hope to make the most out of this session. Thank you, Laszlo, for doing it.
All right, I'm sharing the screen somewhere, so I hope it makes it onto. There we go. That's fantastic. I want to say hi to everybody for this presentation about 10 essential tools. And Eddie, you're absolutely right. There are a few more than that. As well as the original description was what will be reshaping the industry in 2025. Well, many of these already are reshaping, and we can only guess what the tools will be next year that will be doing similar. Just a quick introduction, although Eddie, you already did this, I'm lead researcher and consultant at Nimdzi Insights, and I'm very fascinated by technology and do a lot of market research with my team, as well as we do technology and process consultancy, custom projects for our clients. But I have my fingers in almost everything from customer user experience and customer engagement to, again, technology. Quick agenda. We're going to do a quick warm-up and a backdrop to why is this so important. We're going to look at the human perspective. Of course, I'm going to talk a lot about LLMs, and maybe you will have a few questions as well, and further use cases and tools too. So let's start with 10 AI tools. This is a joke, of course, because there are only 9 of them, but they cover everything from translation to machine translation, post-editing, automated LQA, transcribing, even speech translation if necessary. OpenAI can do it all. Oh, let's add quickly a 10th one. Whatever that use case is probably, again, OpenAI. It looks like we're done, Eddie. Thank you so much for the attention. 10 AI tools named. Well, there's a little bit more to it than that. And we specifically at Nimdzi will list more than 1,000 tools in our language technology radar, which is an interactive online catalog of language solutions. And you can see the various categories that we list in here. We also have a report that is attached to it, which kind of details a lot of things about the different technologies, and categories, and players, and trends. Very much recommend reading it for a broader view than what is going to get presented right now. Those 1,000 tools, of course, they come in various shapes and forms. Just machine translation, I haven't counted them, to be honest with you, but it looks like it's a very extensive list. Of course, it isn't. There are always new solutions coming out onto the market, new brands that are being deployed, and some of them actually may be disappearing. So we keep updating, of course, our list. Again, please feel free and visit and find out more about these tools on our web. Something that we also published this year as a research company is what we call the Language Services Development Curve. And the reason why this is incredibly important because it depicts how the industry has been developing, but also how it will be developing in our estimation in the future. Which is to say, under that curve, you will find a whole bunch of what look like S-curves, yellow S-curves. Those are all fundamental technologies that helped the industry grow. Even though every single one of those, when they appeared, there came the fear of, oh, it's going to make the language industry go away from translation memories to machine translation. And right now it's large language models and generative AI. We're pretty sure that in the next couple of years or so, there will be another big wave of very likely, again, some machine learning algorithm, not large language models, but something beyond it, that will give further boost to the growth of the industry. That said, most people on their own, they probably feel that this is what's happening. Over time, which is going down in this case, originally all the language work was done by humans. And then suddenly machine translation appeared and gradually took over some of the human work. And right now we're in the age where machine translation is being augmented with large language models, or even large language models may be doing the machine translation, even to a larger extent than previously the neural machine translation engines. So even less work for humans. And you can imagine that whatever the next big language AI will be, would it be a platform, would it be a tool, would it be an algorithm, that will further reduce human involvement. And because my understanding, most of you out there from Taiwan to Colombia, you are translators or interpreters, but at least work in the industry. You probably think and feel it on your skin, this very same thing. However, for overall the industry, this is more the picture, which is to say, when humans only did the work, then only there were that many translators and interpreters who could, but there was a lot more demand. Machine translation kind of helped fill these shoes, and even though it took over some of the human tasks related to translating and interpreting, actually there's just more work for humans as well. And currently with large language models, we're probably facing the same. There is a step back from demand to say, can this new tech do more than the previous one? And so many of the buying decisions are being delayed, but actually we expect that human work will increase, and machine translation and large language models, the AI part will keep increasing as well, even though at a faster pace than the human work. And the same will probably be true for the next S-curve, the next technology S-curve that will be boosting the language industry. Of course, at some point of time, according to some, we will be hitting the wall, which is called Skynet, and we can all and paint. AI will do everything, not just language work, but all sorts of other work as well, and we'll be enjoying our lifelong pensions, every single one of us. We'll see if that ever happens, and I'm not going to say if I'm going to be happy or unhappy about it. I just want to say I will be friendly with our AI overlords. But then comes the human perspective, which is really important in the industry. Why is it that language technology helps productivity? Well, the Boston Consulting Group created a survey related to large language models, and they asked the question, how does it help with the performance of individuals? And their finding was, and you may have seen this slide before in similar shape, that 40% productivity increase happened, or performance increase happened, when certain individuals for given tasks, which are actually very similar to translating, they experienced 40% increase in performance compared to people who did not use GPT-4. What usually gets omitted is the other half of the chart, which says, actually, for some tasks, it can seriously hurt performance as well, even more than 20% on average. And this is pretty much how many of the big AI labs are thinking. They never really targeted the language problem in the first place. They were tackling productivity. And the majority of the developments of the big AI tools nowadays is especially focusing on that, the business problem solving, the kind of imitating thinking, imitating logic, providing solutions to problems that we ourselves wouldn't be investing time and effort into solving otherwise, not specifically for the language world. But let's talk about this bit, the 40%. What does that really mean? Well, what performance in this case means is it saved time. Time is the most valuable resource that every one of us have, and the most valuable thing that anybody, including everybody on this symposium, is saving time. Essentially, when you translate or you interpret, you save time for somebody else. You save time of learning the language. Machine translation saves time by generating an output that can be later edited, hopefully faster than creating the translation from scratch. Or in some cases, speech translation will create opportunities for companies to use the tool instead of having to hire an interpreter and having to go through weeks and weeks of planning and preparation. Just plug in a tool, even though the perfect quality is not required, it will do the job. Saving time is the key, and there are two ways of saving time. A technology can either save my time or my customer's time, or save some of my time or all my time. If it saves some of the time, it means it increased productivity, increased performance. Whereas if it saves all time, then it basically means, yep, it replaced the human. We are at the stage with AI tools where they save some of the time. There are plenty of instances where individuals in the industry say, a machine replaced my job. Well, actually, what the machine did was replace your task. For example, the task of simple translation, and got replaced by quality efforts at the end of the pipeline. Would that be revision? Would that be LQA? Would that be post-editing or similar? Moving on, this is what the roles that we typically define in the industry. Whether you're a translator or an interpreter, this is more or less the things that we do. A translator translates or edits or post-edits or creates text maybe, or if you're a writer. An interpreter would be translating speech and summarizes while translating and is transmitting words in a different language. A vendor manager would be finding translators, maintaining a database, sending feedback, or a project manager would be creating projects, allocating work, coordinating and messaging, and of course, delivering. These are actually not roles, these are tasks. And let's face it, AI or automations, especially with AI, can do some, if not the majority of these, to a certain level of confidence. Let's rephrase these roles a little bit, which are more meaningful to the customer, which is the person who enjoys the stuff that gets created. So a translator would rather be, instead of somebody who translates or creates or edits, creates a seamless language experience that enables the user to connect and engage with the content, product, and brand. Or the interpreter, instead of saying, oh, I'm just translating the words that are being said, I capture and transmit meaning so that the listeners trust and understand what they hear. And these are not tasks. These are values that are being created. And this is the place where AI can help you do these. There is a lot of conversation always in the industry. Where's the value that is being created? At the operational level, this is it. Even though typically the C-level up top in big enterprises, the executives, they don't really want to hear this and understand this because they don't speak the language that we speak, that linguists speak. But as soon as you start using these expressions and phrases for the value that translators, interpreters, and anybody working in the industry create, they will be picking their ears up and say, aha, now I understand why you're working for me. But it's almost all about Gen AI when it comes to technology. Let's give a few examples. Or rather, let's look at what large language models are. They're basically, let's just call them general purpose machines. A certain kind of AI that is created by big AI labs typically, and they have the abilities such as they learn from context, you can prompt them, you can inject an instruction into the prompt, and more often than not, the models will actually respect those instructions. By now, they can also fetch and read external data or even use external tools as agents. And then you can also be retrained to become specialists instead of general purpose machines. That is fantastic because we humans, we are special machines, biological machines, and we have the ability to respond to each of these. If LLMs can learn from context, we can provide that context. If they respect the instructions, that's great because we can create those. If they can fetch data, we can specify which one that is. And if they can be retrained, well, we can do that. One thing that machines cannot do, we can, is to verify their output. But to be able to do that, we actually need to do what good looks like, or rather what fit for purpose, whichever phrase you use and whichever paradigm you're following. The key here is that there is a necessity for humans to verify the output of large language models, which we can only know if what good looks like. Otherwise, this is what we end up doing. People here online who are old enough, like me, to have seen the movie from Airplane from 1980, you would know that that is a co-pilot. And many of the AI tools currently on the market, they're often called co-pilots, but co-pilots are only as good as the pilots are, who can control, manage, and override the co-pilot's work. And this scene is where the stewardess is and the doctor is next to the inflatable co-pilot in the cockpit. And of course, they have no idea how to fly a plane. You can imagine what can go wrong in this scenario. So unless you know what good is, you're just using a co-pilot, which is what we often quote as an eager but clueless assistant that still needs guidance and micromanagement. But large language models, they can do a lot of things. The pilot, I'm reading the questions as well. The pilot, there were two pilots and both of them are sick because they ate something bad. And so they need a third pilot that they need to find to actually land the plane because that inflatable co-pilot can't land it. There are a lot of use cases which can be attacked with large language models. Say in the translation space, it can be pre-translation, which is, for example, source content optimization, or even predicting if using machine translation is meaningful or not, predict the quality. Do the machine translation itself, or do post-machine translation tasks, such as automated post-editing or quality assessment and evaluation. Of course, there are all sorts of other content operations that can be done. You can create content with it, rewrite it, summarize, remove gender bias, or flag harmful content, paraphrase, make it more customized. And you can also use large language models to do QA, automated LQAs, or again, quality estimations. You can also inject terminology, but you can also extract terminology. You can use it for engineering, creating scripts, or use it for technical support as a chatbot. And there's a lot of linguistic context that can also be used with large language models too. So it looks like large language models can do a lot of things. And comes the question of, if a tool can do things, do we really want it to be done by that tool? And the metaphor that I love using is that of the give a man a hammer and the man will find a nail everywhere. That's basically what the generic out-of-the-box large language models are. They're hammers, and it's easy to find many nails, maybe shapes and forms, longer nails, shorter nails, this head, that head, and all that. But they're still just hammers, whereas for many tasks, we actually need very specialized tools. And that toolbox there is other AI, specialized large language models, or maybe even small language models. And of course, all the traditional tools that we have in our toolboxes, would that be just simple algorithms or automations? And the key question is, where is this heading? Is it going to be the largest large language models doing every single piece of work, or the smaller ones will be specialized for every given task? We don't know that. The jury is out. That said, large language models, as I said, they can be customized. They can be trained, retrained. And on the left of the screen, you see that's basically what big tech and the AI labs, they do. They find training data and they pre-train models on vast amounts of data on very large computers, and they create foundation models that are made available so that they can be adapted. So you can create adapted models for translation, for question answering, for text classification, and all sorts of other use cases. And actually, this can be done by everyone. Essentially, language technologies to a certain degree became democratized, and everybody from a translator to a CEO can use these tools to create value within the company, or at least to try and test and experiment and find out what's possible currently and what isn't. Let's move on to use cases, which is probably the biggest part that we need to talk about today. 10 tools were mentioned. I already mentioned more than 1,000 in our radar. Let's look at some specific ones. The key message here is that every idea is a potential use case, and probably there is an AI tool that will help with that use case. But first of all, here's what the enterprise viewpoint of language technology is. Most of the very large enterprises, they say, hey, I have a contract with Google or Microsoft or Amazon. I can get all these technologies from there. I can get the large language model. I can get the speech recognition engine. I can get a speech synthesizer, and maybe even some NLP, natural language processing tools as well. There's a lot more to it than that, but each of these platforms offer even their machine translation, their own machine translation technology too. What we also see is, of course, machine translation space is getting heavily disrupted by large language models, both in terms of depth and width, which you may or may not realize. That's a pun. If it didn't really go through very well, then I apologize. For those who know the tools, they probably recognize that depth refers to DeepL, and width refers to one of the new tools released by Onbabel called Widen. And so some of the machine translation providers, just like DeepL and Onbabel, they're integrating large language models into their technologies. And I recommend that you go ahead and try as many of them as you can. Translated tools, especially Lara, also recently announced in the last few weeks. DeepL is hopefully known to most of you, but Lilt globally, which was acquired by MemoQ recently, or Onbabel's Widen tool at widen.ai, go ahead, try them, test them. They're very interesting tools on their own, especially Lara and Widen, because the way they created the public interface even is that you can, just as when you go to ChatGPT, you can ask a question, you can prompt it, you can guide the model. And this is exactly the interface that is enabled by large language models. In your natural language, you can tell the model what you would like it to do with the translation, instead of the traditional, say, Google Translate, You input a sequence of words and you get back a sequence of words. Now you can give a direction to the models, the translation models. And they're really amazing to see how the response changes. For example, Lara, even at the end of the translation, gives a little feedback in natural language, in human language, to say, this is how likely that the translation is good, or how good it is, how it reflects to the original source and all of that. Very interesting progress in language technologies and machine translation, that you can actually use your own language to get the outputs that you need. Similarly, if you're familiar with them, some of the MT machine translation aggregators, those companies that pull together different engines and make them available for individuals, other technology platforms, as well as, of course, service providers such as Indento, CustomMT, Blackbird, or even Phrase, they have inserted large language models into their machine translation offerings, or even offer adjacent technology services and use cases such as automated post-editing or quality estimation and similar. Next to it, of course, the translation management systems. And if you're a translator, you're probably working in not just one, but more translation management systems, and specifically in their CAT tools. And they're all being injected with new AI, which is great because at least you don't have to go out to a third-party tool and use, say, ChatGPT. You can do it directly in the tool if it's provided by the specific client and account that you work for. So on the automated translation side, sure, you can use large language models, ChatGPT or Anthropic's Claude or even Gemini. You can use them for machine translation. You can also inject glossaries. You can potentially use them to repair fuzzy matches or adapt to style or formality, remove bias, and similar. On the creative side of things, you can use it for rewriting, for shortening, paraphrasing, or providing alternative translations. You can also prompt it in some of these translation management systems to optimize for search engine optimization. On the quality side, at the end of the pipeline, you can do automated LQAs. That could be some content filtering for biased or harmful language. Again, quality estimation is really important when it comes to reducing costs, and we'll get there in 2 slides from here. And other use cases are also being integrated into CAT tools and translation management systems. Next to it, of course, there is a different view that we created. I think I'm going to move on from this slide, just to say there are different approaches. So depending on which TMS you work in, you will find different use cases and different experience with these large language models on the machine translation front. Separately, there's something called machine translation quality estimation, which some of you will not really be working with or not facing, but let's recognize this is one of those use cases and one of those tools and features that was developed specifically to reduce effort, which is to say, if a machine translation engine is used, there was no way of guessing, estimating, or understanding how good that translation is. Does it really need to be post-edited? Does it need to be looked at by a quality person? Does it need to be revised? Now, MTQE can help with that and create a risk assessment of separating out those segments created by MT that are very, very likely good enough. And good enough is, I know that it's a relative term. What good enough is, that does not need to be touched by a human, and what are the parts of the content that actually needs to be thoroughly post-edited and revised. And there are tools from Unbabel, XTM, Taos, Transifex, ModelFront, and a lot more. And actually, they're available probably by now for almost all, if not all, translation management systems. As well as I need to give a shout to Konstantin Ranch, who with CustomMT, they created a comparison tool of machine translation quality estimations, which is a very interesting use case to say, now you can ask a machine to evaluate how good other machines are that evaluate other machines, how good they are. It gets compounded. It's a very interesting use case. We're looking forward to how that's evolving as well. But as, of course, it's not just technology providers that offer similar services. If you use any of these, then you probably know the name. If you don't use them through your language service provider, then you may not be familiar with the names. I'm going to ask you, if you use any of these from Evolve, Lia, Aurora, Opal, or StreamAI, if you work in any of these, please drop a comment. Would be very happy to hear your experience with these tools. But language service providers are just as eager to be part of the technology change and integrate large language models and AI further into their workflows. that is typically used for their client developers, but of course they provide an interface for the translators and LangTalent in general to be able to do their work better, hopefully, but certainly faster. That will be contributing to their clients' ability to go faster to the market and to engage prospects faster as well. Next to translation, of course, it's not just translation that we talk about. There's something that we know of that is looming in the air, which is called multilingual content creation or multilingual content generation. And there already have been plenty of tools. I'm sure you know GPT-4. Well, GPT-2 was already released about 4 years ago, and ever since then, there have been a host of different companies creating content creation tools. You may have heard of companies like Jasper and similar. And by now, also language technology companies, DeepL, Lilt, Writer, or SmartCat, they have integrated large language models into their tools to create content. These features are also typically available in the language service providers' AI platforms as well. But the truth is, this use case is also accessible and available for you. You can create a first draft of your email, you can create a first draft of your blog post, even multilingually. Essentially, this circumnavigates or circumvents the entire localization, the create, translate, and then publish workflow, which says, oh, let's just create and publish. There's no need for translation because there's a multilingual element in these tools. Bear in mind, of course, we know of stories where a fairly large language service provider lost a multi-million-dollar business to, well, one of these content creation tools. And the client came back a few months later and said, sorry, our pilots were running really well, but in real production environment, it is not that good. We still need you to check and verify if all of this is correct. Essentially, in some sense, the creative content creation also is impacted by large language models. Similarly, like translation, which is when we not only translate, but we post-edit machine translation output. Very similarly, the content creation space is impacted to say, yep, it's the AI content that needs to be amended, adjusted, and validated. And of course, these are mostly powered by large language models. And if you want to use a large language model, go right ahead. Just go to OpenAI or to Anthropic, the makers of Claude. But you can also go to Google and use Gemini. And these AI labs and big tech companies, they will be giving you access to their tools. My favorite way of using large language models personally is a platform called Poe. Poe is not a large language model. It's rather a collection of large language models. Essentially, with a single subscription, you can gain access to these LLMs, of course, only through their chat interface. And we'll get there in a moment. Why is that important? Why did I just start talking about the chat interface? Is there another interface? Of course there is, the programmatic one, which typically companies, enterprises, LSPs would be using large language models via. But if you want to try large language models on your own, you may think of OpenAI's GPT, but there are a great host of other models out there, including those that may be already targeting a certain use case. They have been fine-tuned for some special task, or they may be actually fine-tuned or retrained for a specific set of languages. And Poe grants you access to a whole lot of these, and Poe is not all-inclusive. Hugging Face is another alternative, which has a lot more models than Poe does. And many of those models are open source, and many of the models on Hugging Face are even free of charge or licensable in certain ways. If you have some Python experience and you love playing around with technologies, I strongly recommend you look at Hugging Face and find out what you can do, even with a Google Colab notebook or a Jupyter notebook, and go wild with it. It's incredible, the amount of variety that is available there. That said, I said we need to make a distinction between chat models and programmatic models when it comes to large language models. And as individuals, we typically interact with the chat models. So chat is chat. The models that we use is ChatGPT or Claude directly through Anthropic. They are trained for conversation. That's what they do. And I recommend that you're nice with your AI tool because they're just simply more likely to provide valuable and correct output to you. But also, unfortunately, the chat interface doesn't allow for a large level of control. There is something, for example, settings like top case settings or temperature, which you cannot access in a chat-based model like ChatGPT directly. But the good news is the chat history becomes part of the conversation, the prompt. It's called incremental prompting, and which means whenever you continue the conversation, whatever has been said before is part of the context of the conversation with the chat model. You can, of course, always reset your chat, or you can jump back and forth between chats if you want to with different models and see how the responses differ between how you converse with them, how you use your prompts, how you phrase your request, or how you provide feedback to the model. API prompting, which is the programmatic way of doing it, is a way of having one machine communicate with another machine. This is how a translation management system talks to a large language model, asks for an input, asks for an output, and gets the output and displays it on its interface. Those are more instruction following models. They can be heavily automated, of course. There's a very high level of control, or a rather high level of control, but there's no chat history. You need to put into your prompt everything that you need upfront because you can't really follow up on it. In other words, if your prompt failed, you didn't get back the result that you were looking for, you have to redo the entire prompt. There is no way to say, oh, could you please correct this piece? That's the main difference between chat LLMs and programmatically used LLMs. One of them you can always go back and correct and challenge the LLM through the prompt as context, and in programmatic way of using them, you have one shot, one attempt to use the model well. You need to include everything into your prompts. Would that be examples? Would that be instructions? What to do, what not to do, the format, everything else with it. Hopefully that's useful information, because there are plenty of use cases for which you can use AI, not just in translation work. Of course, language work is where we mostly use AI. Let's just face it, machine translation is AI, and we have been using it for a long time. But there are plenty of auxiliary AI use cases, such as AI used in communications. Ultimately, most of the communication that we do with our clients, because we're a remote industry, is, well, it's what it is. It's text-based. And guess what? You can definitely use large language models to help you a lot. If you talk to a client or you talk to a vendor, depending on which side you're sitting on, you can use the LLM to rephrase your message to speak their language. For example, if you're speaking to a client-side vendor manager or a client-side project manager, or maybe a program manager or a director on the client side, you probably want to talk to them differently. There are different purposes. There are different lingos that are that need to be used, especially helpful if you're not a native speaker, perhaps, of the language of the client that you're working for. At the same time, these tools are often built into your productivity tools already. So in Microsoft platform, you can use Copilot to do some of this. In Google, you can use some features that are powered by Gemini, or you can download a tool like Grammarly to be helping you with this. And there are plenty of other AI tools that are often based on, again, OpenAI or Google's AI platforms that will provide similar services. And you may have seen even some commercials from Apple where they advertise their new Apple AI, brand new mobile phones, where there's an employee sitting in the office and wants to say something rude to the boss, and types the rude thing into the mobile phone and clicks says rephrase so that the boss understands that he's not being pleasant, but it's said in a polite way. Yes, it can even be used in those cases, even for escalations. If you really want to just blow some steam off, type it into your AI and ask it to rephrase. You will feel good, and the person that you're sending the message to will not be offended. Meeting tools, there are plenty of them that can be used for transcription or AI summarization. We, of course, at Nimdzi use these regularly and basically all the time, unless there's a lack of consent from the other side to say, we are not recording the entire session, the video, or sometimes not even the audio, but we do get an AI transcription tool running next to our meetings, especially the internal ones. And we can each of us go into those tools and ask for different summaries or different excerpts, ask for a list of action items or similar. And there are a myriad of options out there that you can integrate with your favorite email or collaboration platform. And that could be Tactic or Fixer, Rev or Assembly or ChatGPT for transcription. There are a lot of them, and I suggest that you kind of try a few of them before you make a subscription. There could be different things that you're looking for personally where you would find these tools useful in your day-to-day productivity. You can also use many AI tools for kind of documentation or data analysis to would it be sheets or charts, even include information coming from there, so you don't have to read through the entire 20-page, but you get a quick notion of, do I want to read through the whole thing? We use this in research, but I believe that for you as translators or interpreters or other language professionals, it's equally useful when you go and look for would it be a research paper, or would it be a course that is provided, or would that be an assessment or a report on something of interest in the language world? And you can use any of the AI tools for this. Again, ChatGPT or Claude from Anthropic. I personally use typically Poe.com for this. Because, and in the top right, I noted there, let's not forget about things like data security, confidentiality, as well as bias. And the first two are incredibly important. I use these tools for documentation or data analysis if I know that the content that I'm looking at is not confidential. So if I download a report from the web, I know that I can feed that into Claude, even through Poe.com, because it's already on the web. It probably already has been read, that AI tool, in the first place. I'm not breaching any agreements with any of my clients, and I'm not putting anybody's personal or other data at risk. In day-to-day work, of course, most of you will be using the tools that are provided by your clients, or you bought them yourselves. Would it be a translation management system, or perhaps you're using Teams or Slack or Notion or Asana for yourself or together with your clients or your teams. There are lots of use cases in addition to all of these, and those could be related to subtitling or even AI dubbing. And a lot of the media world is proliferated with AI solutions. I will not go into this primarily because of a brevity of time. That's one thing. But the other thing is there are just as many as there are machine translation tools. And to be very clear, we at Nimdzi, we do not endorse any of these tools and capabilities. We list them and we advise our clients on which ones are the most operationally viable, or at least create a short list of those that are most likely to be working for the client. Before we jump into questions, I want to make some conclusive remarks, closing thoughts, rather. Number one, I think I already mentioned that, of course, we in the industry, we are very practiced with AI use, especially if you are a translator, you must have been using already machine translation. If you're an interpreter, you're at least aware of tools such as Kudo or Interprify that do speech translation. You may have even used it in your personal life, or you may have, of course, used Google Translate to do speech translation for you. Those are not tools that are typically in very high stakes environments used. So say in the high value translation and interpretation world, AI tools are viewed as a risk, but we as an industry, we have a lot of experience in identifying how much risk there is to use an AI tool, and we can advise each other and our clients to do the right thing in the first place. Because just because an AI tool can do something, do we really want it to do it? Because as I mentioned, if you give a man a hammer, I will try to hammer everything just as if it was a nail. And you, us, we are the experts. We need to be able to advise our clients how to do this. And again, quick recap, every idea is a potential use case, which is to say, you can use an AI tool for almost everything to a certain degree, as long as you know what good is, as long as you can verify the output, as long as you can correct the output or find the person who can do that. And very importantly, so that it's worth your time. If you're using a tool that just makes you work more, drop it, find another one, or find another use case. But there's probably an AI for every use case that you can think of by now, and there will be even more. So don't get married to specific platforms, because they will be changing over time. They're evolving, they're developing. And I strongly recommend that you try as many as you can over time. Very importantly, it's incredibly challenging to stay up to date on the development of language technologies. We are a research company. We do this professionally. But especially if you're on your own, it's massively challenging to understand what is happening, what are the new things that you should be trying out, and what are the ones that you should stay away from. So sharing experience with each other in different forums is critically important, and not just once a year, but regularly. Because let's face it, the impact of AI is practically already here. Language service providers, they're using it. Clients are using it. Language technology providers, they're integrating the new wave AI into their platforms. And then we, as human professionals, we drive this change. We are the ones who ultimately use the outputs. We are the ones who guide the machines. We are the ones who create the training content or the training material and the data. We are the ones who can validate the output. And what you really need to be successful in the new AI world, especially when it comes to the proliferation of platforms and choices, is to have an insatiable hunger to learn. Oh, and of course, a lot of time to try and experiment or to learn from others. I have one more closing thought, which is if a typical example of the first statement that as a user, you don't need to know what's happening under the hood is your mobile phone. I don't need to know what's going on my mobile phone, what kind of chips there are, what materials are being used, how long the wires are, any of that. I don't need to know how the screen is created. I don't need to know how the microphone specifically sends signals to the, I don't know where it sends it. But as a professional, that's not an option. So for us language professionals, knowing how language tools and language AI works, understanding their benefits and their risks is critically important for two reasons. One of them is because we are using them. And if you're not using them, very likely you will be using them very soon. And second, we need to be able to advise our customers and our clients if and when to use them, to what risk, and how to correct those risks and errors if and when they occur. Thank you so much for your attention. I'm looking forward to any of the questions and discussions even. Eddie.
Thank you so much, Laszlo, for your presentation. I've shared the initial images on LinkedIn, and of course, we have a good number of people with us on this presentation. Please feel free to add your questions as we'll take a few minutes to end the presentation. But before that as well, Mila, if you can project all of the claps. Yes. So there were many claps in there. So thank you, Nina, Kevin, Laura. I can't pronounce. Jobs in good Spanish. Well, yes, thank you. Ekaterina, Yurik, Khalid. My Med Pharma. Why my Med Pharma? My Med Pharma. Please, my Med Pharma. All right. Amir Abdul says, this is by far the best presentation I've attended on AI. Thank you so much. Quick questions. Do you have any specific use cases for AI in localization, particularly in video games?
That is a really good question. So most of the things that I've talked about, they refer to general localization. As soon as you go into the specifics, a specific segment or a specific client or even a specific country or language or culture, yes, it becomes much more nuanced, which is, again, one of the reasons why we need to stay updated so we know what relates to our challenges or to the client challenges. Video games are awesome. I love playing video games myself. And some of the things that are happening there are more related to object recognition and correction. For example, lip movement of the artificially created creatures or characters in a game. But even last week, I attended the conference where some of the challenges that were described by a game developer were, well, actually the place where AI could be most useful are probably the most challenging for AI to solve. Because connecting individually with the gamers, with the players, or, for example, keeping up with the speed of how the language, the lingo, and the usage changes of these games, especially with teenagers I'm not a teenager, but there are a great many teenagers who probably constitute the vast majority of the gaming community. their way of using the tools, their language they use, it changes so fast that you can't really train the AI to do anything really with it in the time and scope that is needed. So even the technology would be amazing to help in those use cases, it's probably the least useful in those. But yes, there are cases where AI can be useful even in video games localization. For example, comparing different characters or scripts, or even if there is a change in the game's in the script for, say, for the non-playing characters, then you can use an AI to compare the scripts, or creating kind of an adversary or a role-playing AI that would be commenting back on you on the game or the script that is being developed to say, where could it be improved? What are the linguistic challenges? Or where are the internationalization problems that could be coming up from the game? Hope that answers the question. There's a lot more to unpack there, and I can't claim myself to be a game localization expert. Being aware of some of the challenges of AI and probably some of the use cases is useful, though.
Yeah, I just find it really fascinating, right? How certain tools really allow you to do proper research and really amplify the effect of kind of like our curiosity. It's really great how some models are able to like aid in that kind of like even personal quest to get certain information. Gaming definitely can benefit from that. Laszlo, there is a question from Serena. She says, how do you deal with confidential information? Are any platforms safe?
No. Oh, yes, the platform that you run on your own PC or mobile phone or whatever device you use, of course. But the thing is that most of the time when we deal with, as language professionals, when we deal with tools, again, we typically use our customers' platform, say a language service provider's platform, or our direct customers. If you're an interpreter and doing direct interpreting, you're using the client's platform. In those cases, the liability for the confidentiality is typically not on you as a language professional, but the tool provider's side is where the liability is. However, there are, of course, instances where you may want to take the text, say, for translation out and put it into a system for doing machine translation so you can post-edit it or do a gist on it or whatever it may be. It becomes immediately tricky because as soon as you're sending the data off to a cloud provider, especially if you're not a paid subscriber, then you'll probably just share the data and the data is theirs. And if there was any confidential information, would it be personally identifiable, or in worst cases, similar like personal health information, or somebody's credit card or social security number or something similar? That's a serious breach of any privacy statement or privacy regulation. It's up to the individual to make sure that this doesn't happen. For corporations, it's also not trivial, even though many of the cloud providers would say, oh, yes, we're this certified, SOC 2 certified, and ISO and all the certifications. Breaches are possible to happen, right? And it's up to every individual and company to assess how far they're willing to tolerate the risk of using AI and using cloud providers to run the AI. And we also know that there's a lot of regulation that is on the table. It's coming, the EU AI Act. The US is also cooking something up. Something may change, of course, with the new administration coming in. There's a lot of challenge, or there are a lot of challenges that we still don't even know what they are. We know that they are there, at least. And probably there are a lot of unknown unknowns, which will just surface in the next 1 or 2 years to say, how do we really handle this confidentiality thing? Where does the content go? Does it get used for training a model? What happens with copyright issues? And what if I was the original translator and then my translation went into training the model? Then why don't I get compensated for that? A lot of questions that everybody needs to chew through and answer. We'll see how that evolves as well.
Thank you, Laszlo. We have a bunch more questions, but we're about to start a new session. I'm going to entertain the few and talk to our next panelist over the internal chat. But Ekaterina Chesnikova, says, thank you for the presentation, Laszlo. Have any recommendations or guidelines been developed for AI-assisted content creation yet? Is it practiced on a wide scale in any areas?
That's a very good question. And we know of many instances where AI content creation is used. But that's typically English content creation. So it doesn't necessarily enter our multilingual world, right? Then again, when it comes to creating multilingual content professionally, if the enterprise is just using Jasper or ChatGPT, that doesn't surface on anybody's radar. It only surfaces if it takes away business from a language service provider or a content creator, copywriter, professional. Guidelines? No, there aren't really. The challenge, of course, again becomes, how do you train the model to be consistent with the brand, even though every single API call is a different API call? Do you need to train a separate model? Is it enough if you just keep prompting it the same way? Do you need to just fine-tune it a little bit? There are a lot of technical challenges, and there are different solutions to it. There are some good practices and not so good practices as well. Guidelines, I can't say that there are specific guidelines for doing this. But there are plenty of attempts, and again, the language service providers and technology providers are injecting these features into their platforms and products. Certainly, there's a future for it. Just as with machine translation, it took us a long time, quite a few years, to figure out how to make post-editing actually work. What are the errors that we need to look for? Now with LLM translations, we have different errors that we need to catch. It's something similar for content creation and for the copy editors to say, it's going to be completely different to edit an AI copy than a human copy. And again, we'll see how that's evolving in the content space altogether. We know that our challenges in the language industry are not dissimilar from theirs.
Right, Laszlo, and I'm going to do one more question.
Yes.
We will not do your question, Lily Nikolova, because she's asking if you could recommend 3 MT providers. You mentioned you don't endorse, and it's very specific, so it depends.
I think there are some household names, though, that everybody kind of knows.
Okay, so and let's go to Nestor's. Nestor talks about for improving QA in localization, besides adding in-country reviews to Gen AI-empowered translation processes, what other approaches or methodologies would you recommend?
To be honest with you, by now, automatic LQA is something that is being attempted. I don't think it's seriously being industrially implemented. It's one of those really challenging things. The main thing that we see is most of the attempts to integrate AI into, say, translation workflows is mainly replicating the same workflows, just doing it faster or more efficiently. We're still waiting for those breakthroughs where AI will help us to do things differently. For example, instead of doing in-country review on the client side, how about an AI can simulate in-country review? Yeah, can you train a model to be a certain personality that can understand reasonably, and understand, sorry about that, it's artificial intelligence, can understand or replicate a potential response from an in-country reviewer or a user who would be otherwise testing the content, right? Is this possible? In our understanding, yes, it is. But it's kind of only meaningful if there's a scale where it can be put into operations, which is one of the major challenges in AI tools in the first place. Many of the conversations that I had in the recent conference season is people get very excited about AI because it can solve many of these little annoying things that everybody has in their day-to-day, in their workflows, in their processes. But the thing is that none of those little things get attention on their own, because they don't have business value to automate and to focus and to create a model for it. So you have to rely on somebody else creating a solution that will solve the problem for you, or go ahead and experiment with the large language model and AI tool of your choice. Hopefully the presentation gave some guidance of what could be the top ones or the most relevant ones to start experimenting with. And then the radar has all the rest of them that would satisfy your appetite for sure.
Excellent, Laszlo. Thank you so much. I really feel like exploring more of these tools. Even you are using them, and then you all of a sudden think those are the only ones. And it's like, oh, there are new ones. They are competing now, just like widgets on WordPress, kind of.
Something similar,
and
yes.
plugins, something like that. It feels a little bit like that. But thank you so much, Laszlo, for your presentation. Like we said, this presentation is going to be available on YouTube, but also on LangTalent, on the LangTalent podcast on Spotify. We will send everyone who has attended this event a newsletter including this information, more information about the future of work. Laszlo, thank you so much for joining us. And I don't know if you have any final thoughts before we go.
I wanted to say just one thing, other than thank you to Eddie and the multilingual team for organizing this great event and inviting me. Hopefully see you again next year, I guess in 2025.
Yes.
But I want to say that just as every idea is a potential use case, every individual who has language expertise has the potential and the possibility to contribute to the development of AI in ways that it can be useful for more people. Very often what we hear is individuals say, hey, you know, my provider gives me tools that I don't need. Well, take your thoughts to your provider. Go and tell your language technology or service provider what are the tools that would help you to make it faster, better, cheaper. Talk to your peers, your translators and interpreters at different events, production and operations by a technology provider, but make sure that your voice is heard. Participate in the discussions, bring your notions, bring your ideas, your use cases, your pains and challenges that need to be solved.
Excellent. Thank you, Laszlo. You'll surely be back in 2025. We appreciate your insights, like everyone who is commenting. Thank you, Laszlo, Ekaterina, Nestor, Nina, Noelia from Madrid, Spain. So thank you so much. Mila, we are ready to get started with our next panel, and is a panel on fostering well-being in remote work. So we're going to be talking about well-being. Thank you, everyone, for your kind notes. I'm sure Laszlo has seen them. But we're going to be talking now about to guide our conversation. As remote work becomes the norm, maintaining well-being is crucial for language professionals. In this panel, we'll address the unique challenges and opportunities of remote language work and offer strategies for fostering mental health, work-life balance, and professional growth. So for the 80 or so people that are watching this live, this is what we're going to be talking about in the next 2 minutes. And then for those that are watching the recording or you're listening to this on Spotify, this is what we're going to be talking about. We will have the presence of Sophie Solomon from Accenture, Nicole Spite James from Avant Page, Liam Martin from Running Remote, and Eva Claudine Jova from the Monterrey Institute of International Studies, the Middlebury Institute of International Studies, I should say. Eva, Nicole, Sophie, and Liam, welcome to this space.
Hi, good afternoon, Eddie.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much.
Good morning. Good morning. Hello. Hello.
All right. And Mila, I'm hearing an echo. I don't know. I think someone's...
No, we can't hear you.
I can cough. But I think we're hearing reverb as well. Someone has their mic open.
Yeah, it might be. You try muting yours, Eva.
Testing 1, 2, 3. That sounds like we're good.
Sounds like you're good.
Reverb.
Hello, Nicole.
Hello.
Can we hear? Okay, we can hear Nicole too. Sophie.
Hello, good morning.
Oh, right, Eva.
Can't hear you yet.
No.
Nope.
Now?
One of the challenges of remote work.
I'm sorry, still not working?
Yes,
We can hear you.
I think we can
Okay,
hear you
good.
now. That is really good.
The reverb's back.
Yeah, I think the only recommendation, Eva, is to put in the headphones. I think it's your audio comes in from your microphone. But I'll try to mute myself whenever you're speaking. And just to make sure that we're all on the same page, we are here in LangTalent 2024. For those that join us for the first time, the intention of this event is to be an online event designed to connect talented language professionals with leading companies seeking diverse and skilled workforces in the language industry around the world. And for those of us that have been in the industry for a bit, we know there's no secret. This is kind of like a remote first industry where a lot of us work remotely. And we know really well how it feels to work remotely. Yet we don't have many of the sophisticated tools that other industries have to facilitate remote work. So the idea of this space is to make sure we talk about that, and we talk about well-being, which is something we should be talking more often in the industry. So to do that, we've invited 4 amazing professionals, and I'd love to give each of them the opportunity to introduce themselves. I have some amazing descriptions, but I'd rather have them introduce themselves and get to know them as we have this conversation. So why don't we do Nicole, Liam, Eva, and then Sophie?
Great. Thank you so much, Eddie, for allowing us to share this space. I think it's an important topic. I have worked at Avant Page for 8 years, and I am the Director of People Operations there, which I have the great privilege of having HR, finance, and administration under me, which is an interesting intersection. So we really get to put our people first. I'm really proud of the culture that we've been able to build there. We've grown from 20 when I started to now 104. So we definitely have some interesting remote work challenges as we expand globally. And I'm very happy to share this stage with all of you.
My name's Liam. I'm co-founder of Running Remote, which is the largest conference on remote work, and then also Time Doctor, which is a time tracking tool for remote work. We have team members in 48 different countries all over the world. And our mission is we are trying to facilitate the world's transition towards remote work. And we've been doing this for almost 20 years. I literally had to Google myself to find out how close I was to that 20-year mark. I'm around 19-ish working remotely. So I definitely was doing it before it was cool. And then automatically not cool. And hopefully cool in the future. We'll see how Elon does.
Yes, I totally agree with you, Liam, and I think I caught you in the middle of those 20 years, and it's been super empowering. So it's great to see you again, Eva.
Hi, everyone. My name is Eva Klaudinieva. I've spent 16 years in the industry. I work both on the vendor side and the client side here in Silicon Valley. I left the industry in 2018 to start teaching as a professor at the Middlebury Institute of International Studies. So my career went back full circle because my first job was teaching at a university in Slovakia. That's where I'm from. I'm a program chair of the Translation and Localization Management department at MIS. And my situation is very similar to Liam because first time I started working remotely was all the way back in 2001. So I had a lot of experience doing remote work the old way when all we had was just the phone and email and instant messenger. So, and I also manage remote teams all over the world. Now I'm working hybrid remotely from home 3 days a week. So I've had a lot of experience doing it every possible way.
Thank you, Eva.
All right. Let me see. Echo? No echo. Okay, wonderful. So my name is Sophie Solomon, and I'm probably the least versed, I would say, in the language industry. But I hear about the language industry every day because my partner is a dinosaur of the language industry. No, that's true. However, my experience with the language industry, I have been a consumer of translation and localization while I worked at Microsoft and now at Accenture. So, but the main reason why Eddie invited me to join here is that prior to joining Accenture, that was acquired by the company that I work with, I was acquired by Accenture. I was responsible for creating, it was a small B2B marketing agency, not small, about 500 people. And I was responsible for, or I built the whole staff augmentation and strategic resourcing arm of the company. And as such, and that was Liam, I could totally relate to you. That was before remote was cool. And we talked about remote culture, or what at the time was like, now it's become a cliche, the future of work, where I hired over 250 consultants to support Fortune 500 companies in their B2B marketing initiatives. So I managed over close to 200 people. I had teams that were up to 59 people, completely remote. To this day, I think I've met 5 people 10 years later. And as such, I developed a whole program and ecosystem to support not only the individuals, but also to promote the virtues and the advantages that come with remote work. So with that, and then I have a whole day job here at Accenture that is kind of boring, so I'm not going to talk about that because that's not interesting.
Thank you, and it gives us a lot of texture on where you're at and where everyone is at. So thank you so much, and feel free to interrupt if you have any thoughts along this conversation. We have some guiding questions, and we know time's precious and limited. But starting with Nicole. Nicole, you mentioned that as AvantPage has grown, you've experienced different challenges working remotely. Can you tell us a little bit more about what those challenges have been? And then perhaps we can all chip into how those can be solved, and even how you've solved them, and whether there are any other ideas on how to go about them, and any other challenges that we see in this and other industries. We're saying the remote language professionals, but it's the remote professional overall.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to share our experience. So I think anytime that you're scaling as a company, there is a need to really put the emphasis on fostering connection and building trust. New people coming in every day, you're losing that sense of community that you once had when you were 20. And that is increasingly harder, I think, in a remote workspace. Just it's a lot easier. I come from the Silicon Valley startup background, and we used to have like TGIF Fridays where we would all play ping pong and drink beer together and kind of share our weekly goals and progress. And you can't do that as directly in a remote working space, right? So how do you carry your culture, and how do you create a really amazing community, which I think we all want in our workplace, right? Is to enjoy coming in on a Monday morning. So some of the things that we've tried to do is not overcomplicate it, keep things really simple, create spaces within, let's say, Microsoft Teams for people to give each other shout outs, or having pizza Fridays where my poor team has to send pizzas to everybody's door all over, the world, which is a very hard logistical challenge, but thank you to platforms like Uber Eats that make it possible. And it's those little things that, and mostly creating the space for people to have real conversations with each other, prioritizing, making sure that people really do sign off at 5. That has to come from leadership, right? Because I think one of the challenges is, especially in the localization industry, I think we're very passionate individuals. I think most people really care about what they do. And when your office is in your home, it's hard to, leave at 5, or things get blurred. So really honoring the person first, and building trust through showing them um, methods to take care of themselves, and to show them that you care about them taking care of themselves will go a long way as you grow, or it has in our approach.
Thank you, Nicole. And Liam, you've seen this for 20 years. What has stayed as a challenge, and of course something that you have to often deal with often. And what new things are appearing there as challenges in remote work?
Well, one of the things that's remaining is, just to Nicole's point, is trust and transparency. And I don't know if anyone had read the Wall Street Journal this morning, but there was a piece which was Elon Musk's first task is to destroy remote work inside of his new government agency that he has set up. So he's very focused on getting all government employees back to the office, and then also mandating other policies to be able to encourage in-office work. And when you look at what they're asking for, fundamentally, they're asking for transparency. So this is really the big issue. And this is, I think, the thing that most people don't talk about, which I think we as a community need to start talking about very quickly, or we're going to lose the opportunity of remote work for everyone, because we now have the richest man in the world and a very, how could I put this in a politically correct way, a very open to new ideas, president type of ideas that is going to probably implement some mandates very, very quickly. We have two entrepreneurs, Elon Musk and Trump, that are going to be running the government for the next 4 years. And as an entrepreneur myself, I'm personally terrified, because I know how I'm like, and I probably shouldn't be in charge of any government whatsoever. So it's going to be a very interesting ride. And I think the core piece that we need to address is the transparency angle. That's the part that's been the issue the last 20 years. It's been one of the things that we also don't talk about that often, which is you need trust and transparency on the employee and the employer side. You need that transaction in order for you to be able to make that work long term. And then in the things that have happened just recently, I mean, we're talking about a complete transformation of everything you could possibly think of when it applies to work. Just in February of 2020, 4.5% of the US workforce was working remotely. And by March, that was 67% of the US workforce. We're currently at about 32% of the US workforce working remotely. And that has not changed for the last 2.5 years. It has remained rock solid. Even when Amazon told all of their employees to go back to the office 2 months ago, it hasn't even moved the numbers a 0.25%. So we're seeing this huge conflict between these two groups. And I think it's probably going to come to an apocalyptic battle in the next 6 months, which is very exciting for me, by the way, as like a remote work guy that's been doing this for 20 years.
Yeah, and I believe those of us that remote work has empowered think about this, and I'm wondering, Eva, from the institute, and you are surrounded by students, surrounded by the next generations. How are they talking about remote work? Are they talking about remote work? Is this something they are expecting? What are you hearing? What do you see from your perspective?
Just a sound check. Can you hear me with the microphones?
We can hear you.
Perfect. No echo?
No echo.
All right, excellent. So to them, it's a given. It's a reality. Okay. To them, it's a reality that is normal. They are not questioning whether they should be in the office or whether they should be remotely. To them, it's like one of two options. And many of our graduates actually stay in Monterrey after graduate because they're working remotely for companies all over the US. So they're not even questioning it yes or no. For them, it's like, yeah, these are the two options and we can decide what we want to do.
And I'm muted, Eva. And you mentioned also that you've been in the industry working remotely for a long time. What were some of the challenges that you first experienced working remotely? And you've mentioned technology has changed abruptly. Is this something, of course, that has made a difference in how you operate remotely?
Yes, it's so much easier now compared to when I started in 2001. Like I said, all I had was the phone. We didn't really have WebEx or GoToMeeting yet. It was not so prevalent. It was not so used. So when you needed to talk to your managers or participate in a team meeting, you had to do it over the phone. And it was really hard to be heard when everybody else I was the only remote employee at that point. So that was one of the challenges. So virtual conferencing has made a huge difference. I don't think we would be as successful with switching to remote work if we didn't have Zoom and all the other options. Another difficulty was being remote, being physically away, and not only like physically away, but literally 9 time zones away from the rest of the company, because I was their first employee who was working remotely from Europe. So I was not, I was separated also by time zones. So I had to adjust my work time. Very good thing is that I'm actually a night owl. So I started working in the afternoon and worked until 10 or 11 p.m. That was not a problem for me. But if somebody is a morning person and is in Europe trying to work with people in California, I think that would be impossible for them. So you really have to look at how your natural rhythm meshes with the regular office hours of your company if you're dealing with time zones. That was a difficult thing. And I miss the camaraderie of the office because I used to work with them in California. And then because of the scholarship I received, I had to go back to Europe for a couple of years before I was able to come back. So I miss those people that I knew in person where we used to have lunches. I didn't have any of that. So I had to work extra hard on building social connections with people outside of work so that I would have that social interaction multiple times a week, because I didn't get it through work. It was mostly just emailing with an occasional phone call.
Thank you, Eva. And Sophie, I want to come back a little bit to the idea that we were talking about with Liam about transparency and accountability. And of course, you've had a lot of experience around this. What are some of the things that you've done? And of course, you've done in-office work as well as remote work. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I think that what you said, Liam, is right on the mark. And I think that really what it boils down to is it's really accountability and trust. And when I hear those big concepts about we need to have people back into the office and we need to know where they're sitting, what they're doing, what they're working on, at the root of it all is like it's a complete lack of trust. And so I think that what makes remote work successful, at least in my experience, is not a traditional engagement model. It's more a deliverable and KPI driven engagement that you have with your employees, where who cares if you work from the trunk of your car or from a chair on the beach, right? As long as you deliver, as long as you meet expectations, as long as you make the project or the situation successful, it really doesn't matter where you work. And I think that the mindset, and I experienced this with Microsoft and with Amazon right now. I'm working on a huge project with them where they demand our people to be in the office 24/7. And when I asked, I mean, literally, and when I asked them the why, they said, well, we want to know what people are working on. And I'm like, do you care about their condition? And it's like, it's trying to find, if you're going to hire somebody, an incredibly talented person that works from Tennessee or works from Oklahoma, works from Medellin, Colombia, that is going to deliver something that is outstanding, you rather compromise the quality because you want somebody that is here in Redmond in the office. I'm like, where's I don't understand the logistics, or I don't understand the logic, right? And I think that really at the root of it all is that it is the leadership style that is really that is suspicious and doesn't necessarily empower the employee or empower the individual to do their best work with the conditions that they want. And so it's really about accountability. And what just to close and go back full circle, Eddie, I think that what has worked for me, or I think that the recipe for success, and Liam, tell me if that works for you as well, is that it really has to, the engagement has to be different. It's how you measure success. Is success the amount of hours you spend in the office behind a screen sitting at a chair, or is it the deliverable? Is it the quality of your work? And so for me, it boils down, you have to reframe the definition of success, and that it really informs the kind of person you want to hire and the expectations that you put into the relationship.
And then there seems to be a huge relationship in the success of those remote endeavors with some sort of a structure or alignment around those conversations. How do you do it at AvantPage? And I would love to also hear about how Liam and his solutions help with this, and how the conference actually gives people tools, or at least helps people get some context on it. But Nicole,
Yeah, thank you so much, Sophie. That was a fantastic comment, because I think you're absolutely right. When I came into Avant and made the decision to call ourselves a people operations team, it was based off Google team, which stresses the need for analytics in tandem with people. And, you know, just like any good idea, you can use it in a positive manner, or you can abuse it. And I think when we're looking at intentionality of creating a better remote working environment, you need analytics to back up the premise that your people will not work less if they are unsupervised, right? So having metrics in place like OKR, or goal setting systems, KPIs, super important, right? Because when you have a manager that says, I don't feel like anything's getting done, we need to bring everybody back in office, you can say, well, let me just show you the numbers here, because what I'm actually seeing is an uptick in productivity. And that's certainly what we saw at AvantPage, right? We have a huge demographic of our employees that live in Mexico City. For those of you that have been to Mexico City, you know that the commute life is a very harsh one, right? They could spend an hour and a half, 2 hours trying to get to work just from the outskirts of the city. Of course, it just makes logical sense that you reduce the time that it takes for them to get into the city to kind of transport themselves around it, that they have more time to focus on their work. Sure, maybe they do a load of laundry here and there. You know, maybe they go on a walk with a friend. We want them to do that, right? Like, it doesn't matter, because if you put the emphasis on, like Sophie was saying, creating great quality products, allowing people to be passionate and take care of themselves and be well-balanced human beings, like, that will only serve your company. And I think it is such a false premise to believe that if they are unsupervised, that they're going to sort of manipulate the system. No, people really care about what they do if you care about them. So that's been our experience.
yes, Liam, I know you've had 20 years of experience, and love to hear more about from your expertise. Of course, this I presume the way in which teams used to manage themselves 20 years, 10 years ago, it has changed dramatically. And of course, even multilingual, we use different types of methodologies as well as like a daily stand-up meeting, which allows us just like sometimes just tell jokes and just say hi to everyone, but it also tells us where everyone is at mentally, and also what they are working on. And if they've switched tasks, that's fine. Like prioritization, it's part of like what your responsibility is. But Liam, would love to hear more from you.
Yeah. So one of the things that's kind of a caveat to this entire conversation is asynchronous management. So before COVID, 95% of remote teams ran asynchronously. So synchronous communication was not a dependency. Right now, we're communicating synchronously, but if you're listening to this recording, you're consuming that information asynchronously. And so that allowed us to be able to be much more metrics driven and an outcome based organization, because we weren't necessarily tied to, do I like Nicole? Is it fun chatting with Nicole? Or what are Nicole's outcomes and outputs as a worker inside of this organization? But to go back to the transparency discussion, I think a bigger part that I've been thinking about basically in the last like 3 to 4 days, as we've seen this shift politically, is we're on the wrong side of remote work for the current administration, and we're located in a whole bunch of different countries. I'm Canadian, currently in Barbados. So it doesn't necessarily affect me, but it does. If you have the US that goes one direction, it's going to impact the rest of those places. And I got a really interesting statistic, which is 67% of remote workers think they're more productive when they work from home, and 83% of managers think they aren't. So it's like the core issue. Now they are, and I could throw essentially about 50 or 60 studies your way to be able to prove that point. But the bigger issue is we can discuss about how we need to trust people and we shouldn't necessarily have any type of transparency or metrics associated with people's outcomes. But the reality is that that's not going to convince the vast majority of the management world that is currently in control of this, and also the administration. So how do you measure that? How do you actually come down to the reality? I mean, there's a whole bunch of things in HR that that are really bad for workers, but we keep doing it. So large office environments where there are no walls. Study after study after study shows it's horrible for productivity. We keep doing it. And it seems like when remote work rolled around and deployed at such a large scale, employees loved it and it was better for productivity. And I think what managers thought to themselves is, if employees like it, it's got to be bad. And I think this is the core piece that we need to be able to reverse here, which is it's actually good for employees and it's good for employers. Right now, employers think it's bad for employers. And that's the piece. And if we continue to talk about how they're just wrong, they won't even engage in this conversation. And so we need to be able to meet them where they are, to be able to hopefully pragmatically move them in the direction of saying, let's talk about what the actual outcomes that you're focused on. Do you want to make more money as a business? I know I certainly do. And if you do, remote work is the best way to be able to do that.
So if I may piggyback on what you just said, I think we are exactly on the same page, which is I love hearing what you have to say. What I go back to when I talk to my clients, it's exactly that. It's the productivity, it's the outcomes. And then I take it one step further and I said, what kind of talent are you looking for? And this is like you get to that conversation about, are you willing to compromise the quality of the talent because you want somebody physically in the office? What if I can find a top-notch engineer, UX designer that lives in Argentina, or that lives somewhere else, that can actually would meet your deadlines, that would make, this is like a unique, what would you do? And usually when I have that conversation with them, I'm like, well, let me think about it. It's not a flat no, because it's really hard to argue with data. But I think the data, we need to continue to drive that conversation around data, and then outcomes, and then quality. And so it's substance. Basically, is, are you willing to compromise and then address the anxiety? What about having somebody in the office is so compelling that you're willing to compromise things like values that are universal, which is content and quality? And so when you have that, and it's really, but it really is, I think it really comes from the top down. I don't think that we need to convince the bottom up, like the talent that is delivering. I think that what we need to do is to have those really profound, if you want, or meaningful conversations with leadership and try to get to the root of the resistance about remote work. Anyway, I just needed to add this.
One little addition to that, Eddie.
Yeah.
In-person policy is also discriminatory, and we've seen it with our students as well. The moment we allowed the opportunity for remote students to join our classes over Zoom, suddenly we're seeing students from different financial backgrounds. We're seeing students who already have families. We're seeing students with difficult circumstances. We're seeing neurodiverse students. We're seeing people with disabilities. So if you force people to go to the office, it's discriminating against a huge part of the population. And what the biggest impact is not only on people with disabilities, but also women, because they still carry the majority of the household chores. And what the numbers are showing, that many women simply, if they're forced to go back to the office, they choose to quit their jobs and spend their time taking care of families full time. So that's a really shift in the wrong direction that needs to be course corrected.
Can I just make one comment too? Which is that there obviously can be challenges with having somebody that's just entering the workforce, let's say working from home for the first time. We have a younger demographic at Avant Page. But going back to Liam's point, is if you create a culture of transparency, you're telling those people from the start, like, hey, we understand that you might struggle to get yourself situated. Maybe you don't have like a private office space and you need to meet with clients. Like, come to us, talk to us. Do you need a desk? Like, what is your situation? Because everybody is adaptable and they want to have the best possible work situation. So creating the space allows them to come to you and say, this is exactly what I need. And then you work and you get there. I promise you'll always get there, but you need to have that open dialogue.
And Liam, you had some final thoughts on that.
Yes. So I just did a piece or I was in a piece for The Economist last week on overemployment. And this is why 83% of managers want everyone back into the office. It is employees that are taking on 2, 4, 6, 8 jobs all at the same time. And they say that they're working a full 40 hours for their employer, but they're actually basically job hacking. And there are posts with people saying, I make $1.6 million a year with 5 jobs or 8 jobs or whatever it might be. And as long as there's that rotten apple in the bushel, there will always be that issue. And you cannot overcome it, in my opinion, without some level of transparency. So inside of our organization, as an example, we consider transparency on both sides, meaning you tell us what you're doing, we can look at your data, and you can also look at ours. So we open up our P&L. Every single meeting inside of our organization is recorded. Anyone can watch any meeting inside of our company. We have a policy of radical transparency where everyone can get access to all information. And then this magical thing happens, which is the employees actually end up making much better decisions, not because they're more or less intelligent, it's because they have the information advantage that the CEO of the company now has. So it empowers them to be able to make these decisions. And this is asynchronous management 101. This is the way that remote companies have run for 20 years before the pandemic. And that's the piece that when we switched to remote, it was emergency remote work, and no one really understood how to manage remote workers during that transition. And we're still, unfortunately, not learning those lessons.
Yeah, I think that's happening. I see it all around. I think the saddest thing for me is to see someone who's really talented at the local level, meaning the physical world, but they can't transfer those abilities into the digital world, which is a huge missed opportunities, because one of the ways in which I've found to kind of like compensate for not having like a team physically with me is to get involved locally, right? To volunteer, to do different things, to be part of different committees, and also be part of the conferences that happen in the industry. So the language and localization industry have tons of conferences, more than the ones that you can attend. Over 20, I would say, that you can actually attend that are on my radar. But we partner up from Multilingual with over 45 different physical events. So let's say you are a company and you are in this transition. You came from the physical world, let's say, which is happy. Has happened to so many people in the language industry. And as companies, some companies are actually right now all physical in one single location in Buenos Aires or Cordoba or anywhere around the world. They have a physical office and they require everyone to show up, or most people to show up. What do you think that they should do? What, let's say that there is an interest, and leadership wants to move towards, like, okay, let's do remote work properly. What are the things that they should consider immediately? Anyone?
I'll take it.
Please.
Well, I think that And Nicole, I'm interested to hear your opinion on this already. I think there's a couple of things. One is that what happens with people that join the company, and there are those that are already in, like acquired talent, and those that you are the future acquirees, if you want, or the future talent. I think for future talent, so the people that are going to join the company, I think that I've spent a lot of time working on onboarding. And I think that a successful onboarding, understanding best practices, understanding the rhythm of the business, understanding the governance around the expectations, understanding about what is the etiquette with video conferencing like we're doing today, and treating it like this is your virtual office. And if you think about it as your virtual office, what is the rigor that you need to have around engagement? So I think that piece is really essential for those that bring in. And then for those that exist, is just basically, it's almost like a change management approach. It's like, how do we switch from what the physical, all the benefits, and getting really crisp on what are the advantages of being in person, and how you artificially recreate or digitally recreate all the benefits of being. So we used to have a virtual water cooler. What is the virtual water cooler? So we had a little picture of an avatar of a water cooler, and everybody would come with their coffee and say, oh my God, the water cooler is broken again today, right? I mean, we would just make jokes, but it was kind of like recreating something. It was almost like before VR, right? But we kind of recreated what it would look like. And then some really bad joke. Who has a really bad joke today? Or, tell us the most horrible story you've had with a client, or just like, today is a happy day. What is the best thing that happened to you? So we would just have like those really moments of candid interaction, but it's actually recreating. It's like doing that change management to bring everybody into the virtual space. And the last thing that I would say about this is that so you'll see I wear my pearls. So this is, I've been working remotely all my life. In the morning, when I go to work, I put my pearls on. When I have my pearls on, you know that I'm at work. I work from my house. At the end of the day, I take my pearls off. That's my way of saying I'm at work. I had a friend who did something amazing. She get up in the morning, she get dressed, she get out of her house, she walk around the block, walk into her office, and at the end of the day, she would get out, walk around the other way, and go back and say, mommy's home. And it was a way, basically, it's just building that rigor, that governance, that you basically recreate. Just like if you peel the onion and said, what are the advantages of being in it being physically there, and you artificially or digitally recreate the rigor, the governance, and the habits to create that virtual space. So those are my 2 cents.
I love that. And if I can just comment, because I think you touched on something really important for people coming into your organization. The first 90 days is like your most critical moment to build trust with your employees.
Mhm.
If you're selling them the Disney experience and they come into your door and it's the Amazon, warehouse experience, you have lost them, and you will never build the trust that's necessary to facilitate a great remote working environment. So that, like Sophie was saying, the 30, 60, 90-day plans with really clear expectations that include tools and trainings that will support them. Like Sophie was saying, like, how do you show up for a client meeting? What's expected of you? We have a shout out and warm fuzzy channel. Like, what can you say there? Like, how do you interact like as an employee? We have a very warm, somewhat informal, but we're also really rigorous culture, right? So where do I show up with more formal rigor, and where do I get to be my human self, in this space? Because one of the things I think we're all as the human race suffering from in this digital technology, especially AI emergent age, is how do we build communities? Because we now have this virtual space, right, which is 1 degree removed, and our hearts and our souls really need to connect with people on an intimate level. So yeah, you have to work really hard to create that sort of intimacy when you are 1 degree removed, but it's possible. And we used to have communities by going into the office and seeing people, and you could tell if Sally was having a really bad day, and you would check in on her. And maybe Sally now is behind a screen, but if you know that she's got something going on with a family member, like, message her. It's kind of, I hate when people think that you have to have these complex systems in place. It's really just following your gut and looking at somebody as if they're human, and creating a sort of infrastructure around that builds community and trust. And it, don't overcomplicate it. Just reach out. Just be a friend, and be professional and hold people to expectations. That's the best thing that you can do for your company and for them as well. Be clear about your expectations. People thrive with boundaries. It's like kids, if you tell them this is where you can play, like, this is where it's safe for you to play, then they will have an excellent time playing right there, but you have to be clear. I'm not comparing like employees to kids. Sorry if it is a bad, maybe an analogy there.
We're not gonna dig deeper into the analogy. Don't worry.
If I may add on the boundaries, that's so critical. And I'm seeing and hearing so many managers now blur the boundaries and expect employees to be on 24/7. So, and I'm hearing more and more accounts of that. So it's starting to get really bad. When I was managing a remote team, we were in 9 different time zones. So it was impossible to coordinate everyone. But I went out of my way to set very clear boundaries. We had to be a little flexible, but I said, and I really kept the rule with a couple of exceptions that were negotiated. I will never bother you anywhere outside of 8 to 8. So 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. your local time. Within that time, you structure your work however it works for you, and we'll try to do our one-on-ones and we'll try to do our team meetings. But I don't want you to bug me outside of work hours. I will never bug you outside of work hours. I will never expect you to work over the weekend. I will never bother you and expect you to work during your vacations, but I expect the same courtesy from you. And one of my team members from Japan actually called me on my Saturday, her Sunday. I'm like, Satomi-san, we're not going to talk today unless there is a big emergency. And she just wanted to talk about some project. I'm like, no, we can have a one-on-one on Monday or Tuesday morning and we can talk about this. But this is not critical and we're not going to be working on the weekends. And unfortunately, I've been seeing that this is being blurred, and managers are taking advantage of the kind of guilt that some of the remote employees are feeling. And so they're pushing boundaries. And so it's very important for both the managers and the employees to set very strict boundaries and keep to them.
Thank you. And I had a question inspired by what Nicole was mentioning. She said, like, it's critical to build communities. And I was going to ask Liam. Liam, could you tell us the $1 million answer to how do we build communities in remote environments? Is it even possible to build communities in remote environment? And I know the answers.
Yeah.
To this.
My perspective is community is not about Pizza Thursdays or whether you get a cake on your birthday. It's about the mission, vision, and values of the company and whether or not people align to that. So that is before anything else. Do your team members believe in what you're doing and are excited about actually making that change in the world? And I think the executive team's primary mission is to communicate how that change is occurring. So as an example, inside of our companies, our mission is to empower the world's transition towards remote work. Got really exciting in 2020. Lots of changes. We were responsible for all of them, by the way. And everyone was really excited about all of the changes that we were making. But it's once you tie people into that, then it's not about whether or not you are having these particular small issues, because you're willing to go through a bunch of crap to be able to focus on being passionate about that mission. And so that's like the core tenet that I think no one really addresses. So the way that I test for that when I talk to other companies is I'll come into a company retreat. So most remote companies have in-person retreats. So once a year, all the employees come to one particular location, and I show up and I say, okay, everyone get a piece of paper out. What is the mission of the company? Write it down.
I know, they don't know.
What is the vision of the company? You have 4 values, right? What are the 4 values? Write them down. Don't look at your buddy's paper. And then I collect them all. And then I go to the CEO and I'm like, so 16% of your team members knew what the mission of the company was. I can't help you. You need to address that before we address anything else. And I would highly suggest that if you're running a company right now, do exactly the same thing. For us, I measure that every single year. Now the team kind of knows, unfortunately, that it's coming. I try to sneak it up on them from time to time, but we're at about 87%. So, and we were at about 65% when we started. So I would say anywhere within that range is very, very good. Anything below 50%, your business is in trouble because they just don't care about what you do. They're there for a check.
Totally.
Thank you so
Yeah, I
much
think
for
what you're saying, I'm sorry.
go.
No, I think what you're saying is that, and I've experienced exactly the same thing, is that when individuals are not purpose-driven, or then you lose the productivity, you lose the commitment, you lose the passion. When you are financially, when you are transactionally driven, that is where, somebody comes in, gives them more money, they're gone. And so it's the purpose thing that I love the way you talk about it, where once you internalize that purpose, then you become part of the furniture, so to speak, right? You're in the web into the company. Yeah.
I'll give you one other little trick that we implement, which is we give an opposite question for the talent fit. So we'll ask candidates, we'll say, we really like remote work, but we think it's really important that you come into the office from time to time. And then we find out what they say. And if they disagree with us, exactly the right talent fit. So everyone, if I say like, do you like hot dogs? Everyone will say yes, even though maybe they don't, right? You need to be able to figure out specifically what the opposite question to that is, because if someone disagrees with you in an interview, to align directly with your mission, that's the person that you want. And we are laser focused on trying to figure out people that have drank the Kool-Aid with us. We really just consider ourselves a cult, and we are focused on that core thing. And we want to find new cult members to recruit. And if you can do that, all these other problems just get solved automatically. It's just not even an issue, right? There is no issue of, oh, could I make sure that, I deserve a raise? Well, you see the P&L, you see our finances, you see our targets. Do you really think that you need a raise? You have all the information available to you. Could we afford this, right? It just, if you're open and honest with people and they're focused on the mission, it will work. But so few people don't even pay attention to it, which is really frustrating.
Yeah, it's so true. Get so good at recruiting. It'll save you so much time and energy, and people will be happy.
Do you know what I ask people when I recruit? The first thing, just to throw them off, I'm like, what's your superpower?
My favorite question that we always ask is, who's the most important person in your life, and what values of theirs do you either have or wish you had? Because it shows a lot about the core, what's at the core of somebody,
Very, very interesting. Thank you so much. And I see a few of those that are watching live that like the idea of the cult, Liam. So you might have a few more cult members
Come on over.
apply here and there. They might know some of the tricks of the questions, but great questions, great insights. We might have an extra couple of minutes. I know everyone is very, very busy. If you have any questions, please put them in the comments here. But right before we go, are there any final thoughts that you'd like to share, any of you, in any order?
The only thing I would say, and I think we touched on this a little bit, it really it boils down to the human experience. And I think that if if individuals that are in this environment, whether you're in leadership or your talent, make sure that you drive it from a place of authenticity and human centricity, meaning, and I'm going to use a silly analogy, which is kind of a cliche, like put your oxygen mask on first and take care of yourself. Make sure that you're doing, purpose-driven work, that you take care of your health, you take care of your family, you have your priorities straight. And if you are in your best place, in your best shape, you're going to give your best work. So I think that especially in remote work, just make sure that you prioritize things properly and don't compromise. That would be, at least for talent, and then for leadership also, make sure that whether the cult that you create or the firm or the environment that you create, it's really human centric, because we're so we rely so much on technology when we think about remote. We want to make sure that we don't forget the human in the mix of it all, for the sake of productivity. That's my last parting comment.
Yeah, and I'll just piggyback off of that. We are a beautiful, multicultural, global industry that is built to enable and foster human connection. So let's not forget that in our places of work, because what a privilege that we get to work in this industry, and that we get to be passionate about what we do. So just take care of your people. It'll pay you back in folds. So.
Yeah, and we have a question that perhaps could help us also guide these final thoughts. Amir talks about research that show how much workplace learning happens through social interactions. Of course, we might have to break that down a little bit more. But how does the absence of social interaction, I guess, the core question, um, uh, in remote work, impact this? And what might be some ways in which we could overcome those? I love yearly team retreats. I love that. I love the idea of team retreats. I really, really like it. I'd rather spend 3, 4, 5 days with the team once a year than being with them the entire year. Nothing against my team members. I just do a lot of great work by myself as well. But I don't know if anyone wants to take a stab at that question.
I'm
I'd
sure
second
Liam
that one.
probably has
In
some
2 weeks, we're going to the Bahamas. We're going to Atlantis for 7 days. It's going to be awesome. We're all going to go on like all those water slides
Wow.
in Atlantis, and it cost us a lot of money to be able to do that, right? It's I think the budget there is probably close to $500,000, which is a lot of money for us. But we're very happy to continue to spend that money, because for us, that's really the positive ROI that we have. It's a conference about the company, really, that we get to do every single year. And people love it. They look forward to it. It's a huge company perk. We usually try to fly people to really interesting places. We went to Dubai the previous year. The year before that, we went to Bali. The year before that, I think we went to Bangkok. So it's just one of those things that people really love. And it's fundamental to our culture. So it is something that I would probably say, yes, social interactions are important for other forms of learning, but we're very mindful of that, and we actually try to stack it all. I have a very in-depth video on our YouTube channel where I go through everything that we did, the full P&L of how we do our company retreat, and also all the things that we did to prepare for it, because there's a huge team that also does that lift every single year. 1 full quarter of a team of 3 people is just to do that company retreat.
Wow, that's
And you
incredible.
can also
Yeah, and I
do
think
that
if you're not in a
programmatically.
yeah, right. That's what I was going to
Do
say
you want
too,
to go,
is
Nicole?
if you don't have the resources. Oh, sorry. I think there's a little bit of a delay.
You go
Did I
first,
cut you
Nicole, and
off again?
then Eva.
Oh, okay. I'm so sorry. Yeah. I was just going to say that we've had on the budget to do a big company retreat every year, and it's been cost prohibitive for us to do that. But what we have done is like micro opportunities for people to meet. So if there's like a little bit of a hub, it's a lot more cost effective if you can just throw up a co-working space or get a hotel conference room for a little while, and something that we're exploring for next year, because we're continuing to onboard a lot of new employees. And like this person had commented, training can be really effective when you're sitting side by side with somebody. So when we're bringing in a huge influx of people, we're going to look to potentially have training events for new employees, because it's also a vote of confidence to say, you're new, but we want to make sure that we take care of you, so much so that we'll fly you an hour here, or we'll pay for a hotel room here, and you get to meet your colleagues and really learn them, right? So yeah, I think it's always good to look for opportunities. And I'm so sorry that I cut you off, Eva. Go ahead.
No worries. It happens with online spaces. So what I wanted to add is you can approach learning systematically. You have to literally focus on that. We set up different channels of how we constantly communicate with each other. We have a shared team space. I'm forwarding articles and research to my colleagues all the time. We never skip our team meetings, and I extended our team meetings by extra half an hour to make sure everybody has a chance to contribute and ask questions with a shared agenda ahead of time. And I'm having my new colleagues shadow the more experienced colleagues, and with a 3-part structure where we have a plan of what we want to learn, what we want to get from the shadowing. Then we do the actual shadowing, and then we have something like a post-mortem where we analyze what's been learned. And all of that is documented. And now I've asked our newer colleagues to create a shared training document. Whenever they find new information about anything, they share it with the rest of the team so that we can learn from each other, even though we overlap in the office for maybe just a few hours here and there. There are some colleagues of mine that I only see once or twice a semester. And we still make it work because we make it a point to over-communicate, to overshare, to focus on this as a very important part of our jobs.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Eva. And maybe, and I know we are past the time. If you have to go, any of our panelists, I sincerely apologize. But if you have some time to stay, that'd be great. Nina Kalinina, maybe Sophie, you can help us with this, because you already gave us some advice on how to keep home and work separate, because working from home makes it hard to tell when work ends and when life begins. I've heard of this concept of work-life integration, which is just part of what you do. But yeah, it's good to have boundaries, right?
Absolutely. And that's what Nicole was talking about earlier, is that those boundaries are very important, in the same way that, or you, Eva, were, just getting really, be very transparent about, especially when you work from home, with my family, with my partner, with my children. I make sure that they know. So in my own ecosystem, when I'm in the office, I'm in the office, and I'm my little office, but have my pearls on, I'm working, right? And so don't barge in. Why, we don't have lettuce. Well, not now, right? So, and of course, life happens. So, but I'm very crisp and very clear about what the boundaries are now. So I think that it has to come from you. You have to make your ecosystem know and understand what your boundaries are. Same thing with, we all have phones, right? And so the Pavlovian response that we have, it beeps, we look, or just turn it off. Just make sure that you don't get distracted. So you need to have that rigor. And also for the outside world, you inform. I have an out of office message that kicks in at 5 o'clock, because I start working at 6:30 or 7 a.m. in the morning. By 5, I'm fried, right? And if I think that I can be productive past 5, forget, I'm going to give you, half-baked cake, and then I'm going to ask you if it's delicious, and you're going to say no, right? Or you're too polite to say it's not. And so with work, it's exactly the same thing. And it's just like being very, and don't be afraid. Tell your manager and say, you know what, I'll get back to you tomorrow at 8 a.m. And they said, well, I need it tonight. And I said, well, I don't think that's going to work. And the more boundaries you have, the more authority you have in your own world. And I don't mean that you have to be authoritarian. It's like you need to own your space. And if it starts to spill, what's going to happen is that you're going to grow resentful. you're also going to train others to expect that they say jump and you say hi. And pretty soon you're just not going to be able to fold the laundry with your kids, or just do their homework, or even if you don't have children, walk the dog. The dog is going to sit there looking at you and say, excuse me, I need to go potty. I don't know. But do you know what I mean? It's like you really need to be the driver, and don't be afraid to set those boundaries from the beginning. We talked about onboarding from the beginning. Say, you know what, I just put it on my email. And one of the things you can do, I said, I know that sometimes my out of office says, I know that I am working, these are the hours that I prefer to work. I do not expect to get back to me until these are in your working hours. I don't want, because I manage large teams, I don't want them to feel that they need to respond to me because I send an email at 1 a.m. So you just put those guardrails in place, but don't be afraid. Even if it's your first job, just set the expectation. Otherwise, it's training people to say, oh God, I can't talk to Liam at 6 o'clock. I'll just send him a message, or you'll have a delayed message that comes afterwards because Liam said after 5:30, I'm not responding. So
Thank you. And of course, we've gotten a lot of insights from you today. I want to thank you for being part of LangTalent. We will do this next year. Again, I will give you some time now to say goodbye to everyone and to let them know where they can find you, perhaps how you could be of help. I know that a lot of the content that Liam puts out, for example, is really good for remote work, and I use some of that myself with our team. So Nicole, Liam, Eva, Sophie, please say the goodbyes to these amazing people that have been listening to us, and anything else you want to say.
I'll start. Thank you so much for conducting this session, Eddie. It was a great pleasure to be a part of it with these amazing panelists. You can find me on LinkedIn with the name that you see here. Avant Page is hiring a lot, so if you're interested in working with us, check out our open roles. And I'm always here to serve the community and our industry, so please feel free to message me at any point in time.
Thank you, Nicole. Mr. Liam.
You can find me at runningremote.com if you're interested in getting tickets there. And also, we open source all of our talks. So all the talks are available on youtube.com/runningremote. So if you want to learn the newest and coolest strategies on how to build and scale remote teams, go find everything there. And I am on LinkedIn, but I don't look at it. So I saw a couple people joining, I think, or trying to follow me on there. It's probably not the best place. YouTube is a better spot.
Thank you, Liam. And next year, the Running Remote conference is going to be in Texas, right?
Austin, Texas, April 28th, 29th, and 30th, which we're very excited about.
I haven't been there for a bunch of years. I might make it this year. I will talk to you and Igor about it. Thank you so much for making it, Liam. Eva.
Thank you, Eddie, for inviting me. Thank you to my fellow panelists for great insights. I am on LinkedIn and I do check it almost every day. So that's the easiest way how to reach out to me, because I have 6 email addresses and things sometimes get lost. So best way is always LinkedIn. And I'm happy to help with any questions you might have.
All right. And last but not least, Miss Sophie, how are you? Thank you.
Good. So I do check LinkedIn. Actually, I train people on optimizing their LinkedIn profile and how to leverage LinkedIn. I stalk people on LinkedIn. So yes, reach out to me.
I'll email you later, Sophie, please.
Same here.
I stalk, and I tell people, I stalk you. There's a great tool called Crystal Knows also that gives you a lot of information about people, and it's totally legit. It's all out there. But anyway, yeah, if you're interested in reaching out to me or want to have some further chat, I'm happy, and LinkedIn is good. I'm just going to reach out to Liam on LinkedIn. I'm just teasing you, Liam.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Our amazing speakers. Thank you, Camila, also for being back in the pre-production, during and post-production. everyone who is attending this event, I want to remind you of a few things as our panelists exit. Thank you so much, everyone. Remember that this content will be available on our website, multilingual.com/lang-talent. You'll also be able to find this content on YouTube and Spotify as Lang Talent. We will send out an email to everyone who has attended this event. Please remember that you will be getting a subscription of our magazine. The November issue is out, and the December issue is going to be out soon. We are going to be present at amazing events next year. So if you're going to be there, let us know. I will be talking to the Running Remote team. It's a really fun conference. I think if you work remotely, it's one of the conferences to attend. Everyone else who is listening to this synchronously, thank you so much for your time. We hope you enjoyed it. Send us your feedback, and we will see you in April of 2025. And next year, we're going to be doing this activity twice. LangTalent, Let's Talk Human. We hope that this has allowed you to explore career opportunities, gain exposure, and get involved into the conversation about the future of work. Thank you so much for joining us from wherever you have been, which we see is a lot of different countries. Burkina Faso, we saw Mexico, Argentina, Spain, the Ukraine, Canada, Saudi Arabia, Italy, Brazil, Colombia, Montenegro, Pakistan, Bogota again, Taiwan, Thailand, Malaysia. Amazing. Thank you, everyone, for making it happen. And we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.